Hello, it's Debbie Potts, and I wanted to have my friend Ronda Collier come back on the podcast to talk about how to use heart rate variability to improve the whole you. So, if you are tracking with Aura, I don't have mine because it died. My Garmin died. I don't have a Whoop, so I can use a heart rate strap to measure my heart rate variability. If you're collecting this data, what are you doing with it? Why are you collecting it? What does it even mean? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go back to basics, and I'm doing a follow-up video by myself of definitions because I think it helps to understand what all these terms mean. So if you are a health optimizer, you're collecting this data, it's good to know what it is and how to use that to change lifestyle habits, exercise, nutrition, breathing techniques, stuff we can do. So we're going to talk about the vagal nerve, vagal tone. How do we measure it? How's our heart rate variability related to this? And how's heart rate variability or vagal tone related to our nervous system? Parasympathetic nervous system is our rest, detoxification, digestion nervous system. Rest and repair, digest. Then on the other side, we have the synthetic nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze. People add in now. The measurement, when you do heart rate variability on Sweet Beat Life that we're talking about today, you can find your HF, high frequency, to your low frequency. High frequency is always opposite my head. That means low parasympathetic nervous system. So high frequency is a score of how your parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is going to show up low frequency. So when you're doing testing with an Aura ring, you get a little red light measurement of your pulse, and that's just finding your heart rate variability. So we'll talk about that in a Whoop, light on Garmin, back of the watch, versus actually measuring with a polar type of Bluetooth heart rate monitor, connect it to an app, and you do a 5-minute test. Now, you get the number, heart rate variability, but also, as I just explained, you get a number low frequency to high frequency. I think this is a really important measurement, and I have my clients do this, and I also do this test when I'm doing someone's Panoe metabolic resting metabolism test. When they're lying down rested, we do a 10-minute metabolism test, figure out the fat to carb burn, calories burned today per day, estimated resting metabolic rate, but also measuring the heart health. And Panoe report does give a measurement for heart health relates to your heart rate variability, your resiliency. But then I do a follow-up 5-minute test since they're already lying there relaxed. Let's measure your LF to HF. Are you sympathetic dominant? Are you able to switch back and forth? So as with everything I find, it's the Goldilocks effect. Not too much, not too little. You're not stuck here, stuck there. You're able to go back and forth. Metabolic flexibility, heart variability, resiliency, all that is good to help our mitochondria, our metabolic health, our longevity markers. So let's learn more about Ronda Collier. I met with her at Ben Greenfield's Superhuman Coach Conference way back in 2013. At that time, she was talking about heart rate variability. Exact timing, I was getting symptoms of adrenal exhaustion or metabolic chaos, we call it as FDM practitioners. Soon after that conference, I was learning about measuring heart rate variability in Ben Greenfield's Superhuman Coach program I was in, connected with Rhonda, and then I also did a 30-day program with their Sweet Bee Life, measuring my heart rate variability throughout the day, looking at my stressors and helping that biofeedback. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So let me know your questions on heart rate variability, your vagal nerve, vagal tone, what all that means, because I'm doing a series of it because I think all of us are being these health optimizers, but not really understanding the mechanism in action, how it all works and what it means and how to use that information. So not just looking, oh, my heart rate variability is blah, blah, blah today. what does that mean? So let's find out more. And I love to hear from you. Send me your questions in the comments below. Okay, guys, I wanted to do a series on heart rate variability because it's such a common metric people are measuring these days on their Aura, their Whoop, and there's new devices coming out. And I always go back to my friend Ronda Collier, who's kind of the pioneer in this area. You're the first one I talked to 10 years ago. Well, 11 years ago now, 2014, 2013 when we first met. So Rhonda, thanks for coming on the show and diving into heart rate variability, vagal tone, vagal nerve, and
Yeah,
more.
yeah. Thank you, Debbie. I love this stuff. It's really a great way for people to measure their systemic health. And one thing I like for people to consider when we go on a diet, we have a scale. We can measure if the diet's working. But when we're doing lifestyle changes and trying to improve inflammation or digestive issues or just general stress, we don't really have anything to measure that, but we do actually. And so the Sweetwater Health app acts as your scale, if you will, to measure the effects of your lifestyle choices on your systemic health and all sorts of areas of health. So, yeah, it's really a big
Well,
thing. And I think since COVID, the self-health movement is in full swing.
yeah, true. So talk about what drives you to be in this area. You've been in this field a long time. Give us a little brief overview of kind of how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I actually have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and I did video and graphics chip design in Silicon Valley startup companies for a long time. And I started getting this feeling like I wasn't doing anything, which is really bizarre because you're working 60, 70 hours a week. It's a very high pressure job.
Mm-hmm.
But so I went to graduate school in holistic psychology. Um, and then I just finally just quit my job and focused on graduate school. And that was the first time I really had a chance to learn about the state of humanity. And it was grim. I'm just going to tell you. And so, but then I started learning about living systems theories and coherent and emergent properties and complexity theory. And we as humans, we as bodies are all complex systems. And so when a complex system gets too far from equilibrium, it can reemerge into a higher order system. And a great example of that is when you pull the plug in the sink and all the water molecules start diving down, trying to get down that little hole. And then suddenly you get a funnel. Okay. So that is an
Mm-hmm.
emergent property. It's
Yeah.
a higher order system from chaos. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started realizing that there's hope for humanity because we are going so far from equilibrium and we are a complex system that we can suddenly and spontaneously, relatively quickly, rearrange ourselves as a humanity and as a world into a higher ordered, coherent system. And so I also learned that the brain is a giant pattern matcher and filter, and it will filter out anything familiar, even if it's dysfunctional. And so, in order for the world to emerge into the place we all want it to be, it starts with each individual. And so, what I decided after graduate school was that we needed an app that would bypass that pesky brain filter and give you objective measure of when you went into fight or flight or when you got triggered and what in life was actually causing dis-ease or stress or chaos in your life that was being filtered by the brain filter. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's when we started Sweetwater Health. First as a stress monitor and an alert to alert you when you got into stress. And then we dove further into the whole HRV, heart rate variability, for recovery and vagal tone, and then just got into all of that. So yeah, that's how we came about this.
So what is how do we measure our stress? Is that and how is that connected to what we'll talk about vagal nerve?
Okay, well, so let me just back up for your listeners who aren't very clear. Heart rate variability in and of itself is the variation of time between heartbeats. So if you picture an EKG and that blip, blip, what we do is we measure the time between those beats. And it doesn't beat like a metronome if you're healthy. It actually has variation. So if your heart beats at 60 beats per minute, it doesn't beat at 1 second intervals. It beats at like 0.92 seconds between heartbeats, 0.98 seconds, 1.02 seconds, et cetera. And that will average out to 1 second intervals or 60 beats per minute. And so what's causing that in general is the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. We have the sympathetic branch, which is the fight or flight branch, and that speeds the heart up. Then we have the parasympathetic or rest and digest branch that slows the heart down. And so as you move through your day, these two branches are doing a little bit of a tug of war, if you will. And that causes the variation of the heartbeat or heart rate variability. And so it's 30, 40 years of research, and we get our studies through the National Institute of Health. So it's all pretty much peer-reviewed research. They've learned that the sympathetic nervous system has a certain frequency response. And parasympathetic has another frequency response. So what we can do by taking the time between heartbeats and running it through a bunch of math, we can see how much of your nervous system is sympathetic response or fight or flight versus parasympathetic. And so to measure stress, if you have like 10 or 20 times more sympathetic fight or flight versus rest and digest, that's a stress mode. And I'm telling you, we have customers who have like a 20x, and it's chronic. They never go into parasympathetic dominance. They don't even come anywhere near a balanced state of nervous system. And they had no idea because the brain is filtering this dysfunction out because it's chronic and it's familiar. So that's how you measure stress. You look at the nervous system and you can see a full-on chronic override of sympathetic response, fight or flight response.
So you bring up a good point that the word chronic is not always beneficial stress, or not really ever. I think it ever is beneficial, but acute stress is good. So what you're saying is that we want to have ability to shift to parasympathetic, back to parasympathetic, and go back and forth. So we're stronger, we're more resilient. But what happens when we have too much of anything that becomes chronic, so chronic stress, external and hidden internal stressors, that shows up on your tests of sympathetic dominant, that we're stuck in that low frequency state when we measure it versus back and forth is how you're looking at it.
You should have back and forth. And here's a really good example. Actually, it's called the tilt test in medical arenas. So when you're lying down and then you stand up, you need the sympathetic response to increase your heart rate so that your blood pressure increases so that you don't have a head rush and fall down. And then you want your heart rate and everything to come back down to the baseline once you've been standing for a few seconds, So a high heart rate variability, a high flexibility of the nervous system will immediately increase your heart rate when you stand up, and then your blood flow will increase. And then once you start walking around, it comes back down to baseline. And so a low heart rate variability might have you have a head rush and fall down. Or it might increase your heart rate, and then your heart rate stays increased for 30 minutes before it comes back down. And that wouldn't be good either. So that would be an indication that you're having some issues with your systemic health and your nervous system elasticity.
And that would be related to adrenal health, because in nutritional therapy, when I was doing the functional assessments, one of the tests that we would do is have someone lie down to stand up and measure their blood pressure, lying down, and then measure it standing up. And that was a good correlation to, are you hyperadrenic or hypoadrenic? So your HPA axis dysfunction.
Yeah, and it's all tied together. All of the adrenals and HR, well, as you know, from your, issues 10, 12 years ago, that kind of got you into this. Yeah. So it's all tied together. We look at it as a HRV system. We look at it from a systems theories where it's thoughts, emotions, environment, as well as physiological factors contribute to your holistic heart rate variability.
And that's kind of what I was connecting with you last few months, looking at the hidden internal sources of stress that we often have no clue about unless we're doing functional lab testing and correlating that with heart rate variability. So I was kind of going down a rabbit path, looking at people's microbiome tests and looking at chronic gut inflammation, IBD, celiac, dysbiosis, whatever. And then those scores that I track with clients' biometrics, heart rate variability was really low. And I started to see this pattern and how we're talking again about it's not just external stress, living life as a race, but it's that hidden internal stress that people don't really connect all that together, that you're a whole person.
Well, yeah, and you make a great point that I think nobody really thinks about, or most people don't. I'm just going to say it. They eat bad food. They eat processed food full of glyphosate and all kinds of high fructose corn syrups and just processed crapola. And so it's a two-way street. So the vagus nerve, which we're going to talk about, the vagal tone and the vagus nerve, which we'll define in a minute, but I want to stay on this point, influences the microbiome. Okay. And at the same time, the microbiome influences the vagus nerve. So you can think you're healthy as anything, but if you're eating processed foods, and glyphosate just kills your microbiome, and just all the stuff, you go in the middle of the grocery store and I can't believe people still buy that stuff, but they do. And so it messes with your microbiome, which then in reflection reduces the effectiveness of your vagal tone, vagus nerve. And then that can lead to all kinds of stuff, anxiety, depression. It's associated with seizures and Parkinson's, IBS, IBD, inflammatory bowel diseases. Yeah, all kinds of things. So it's a two-way street. I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah, and we'll get to the vagal nerve in a second, but I think just to wrap that up, that so many people think you collect data from heart rate variability to get your baseline. What is your normal? And then you get to know, oh, if I'm higher or lower than that normal. But what if that normal is not your optimal? And you just start to accept that's what my HRV is just always low. I'm always 20 or 30, and I want it up to 90 or whatever your range is. But they don't know how good they could feel, because what they're feeling as now is that this is as good as it gets. This is my normal. This is how I always feel. And you don't have any clue. You don't know what you
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, so there's enough data out there showing what a healthy population looks like based on age and gender. And our Daily Beat HRV app has put you in a quadrant that you do a 3-minute reading every morning, and you can see where you are compared to other people your age and gender. And I'm going to say it's probably not optimal, because the population of the United States is mostly metabolically sick or not optimal for sure. But it does give you an idea of where you are compared to other healthy people your age and gender. So if you're down in the low area, even though that's your normal, you'll want to know that. And we've seen customers that were really, really low. And changing emotional health, this one woman at Bulletproof Conference came back the next year after years of coming in just looking meek and bad and unhealthy, a new vibrant person, after we actually helped her get to some emotional stuff she was dealing with, and it was all emotional. She came back the next year and we're like, oh my God, who's this woman? And she was very low, like vagal tone, HRV down in the 30s. That's really low. And so there are levels that people don't want to be. And if you use Daily Beat, you'll see if you're down in any of those lower levels, then you're really going to want to do some work to improve your HRV.
So let's go back to kind of mechanism of action. Let's define what vagus nerve is and the role, and what is vagal tone, and we'll get to how that's connected to heart rate variability.
Yeah. Yeah. So the vagus nerve is the 10th of 12 cranial nerves. It's responsible mainly for mediating the heart rate, especially from the SA node and the sympathetic response that increases the heart rate. So the vagus nerve comes in and slows the heart down. It's also connected to, like I mentioned, the digestion, your microbiome, the liver. It mediates hormones. It mediates all sorts of things. It connects to your liver. Yeah, it's migraines. Okay, low vagal tone is associated with migraines. So it goes all the way down. In fact, it's Latin for the wandering nerve. Okay, that's where it's derived. And so, like I said, it's one of the cranial nerves. It's connected with the the base of your brain, and it comes all the way down and connects with a lot of organs, and is really associated with mediating the influence of, basically you can say, fight or flight response. But then, like I said, all these connections are bidirectional as well. So what you're eating, what you're being, how you're responding to the world, your environment, all that sort of thing, emotional, psychological, physical, and nutritional, can go back and forth with and influence the vagus nerve. So a healthy vagus nerve is measured by what's called vagal tone. Okay. And so they measure that using heart rate variability. And so as I mentioned, the heart rate variability in and of itself is the variation of time between heartbeats. You can take this, and now you've got a list of times, 0.0, 0.1 or 1.02, 0.98. You've got this whole list of, you can have an hour worth. Okay. And so you can run that on a statistic. You can do a standard deviation of those numbers. For those of you who've taken statistics, you can do a root mean square. Okay. And it turns out that the root mean square is an indication of vagal tone. So what you do is you collect the time between heartbeats, and then you run an equation on it. It's a statistical equation. And that gives you an indication of your vagal tone. And I do want to point out that you really need accurate numbers. We measured out, it's microsecond accuracy, that you need a single lead EKG type device. And the optical devices, like an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, a Whoop, or an Aura. We love those products, but you're not going to get really accurate HRV from those. They've got algorithms to try to adjust it, but it's still not going to be the same as an athletic chest strap or a handheld single lead EKG or patch. Yeah, you want that.
And then that is
yeah.
that
So, but anyway, we
category?
run a root means.
Sorry, we have
delay.
The Aura Ring.
Yeah, we have a delay.
Aura Ring or Whoop
It's
Band,
in
is
that
that the
same
same category? Okay.
Yeah. And we've bought those products, and we want to see them work, but we've worked for 10 years on trying to get optical HRV, and it's just really it's super. So for those that aren't familiar, it's measuring the expansion and contraction of capillaries versus an electrical signal, which is the bleep you see in an EKG. And so the expansion and contraction of capillaries don't give you that bloop in an EKG. They give you a rounded, like a sine wave. So first of all, finding the exact beat time is difficult. Algorithms have gotten a lot better with it. But you're still not going to be exact as a single lead EKG type device, which an athletic chest strap, a polar chest strap, or a Wahoo chest strap is single lead EKG. And they're super sensitive to motion. So when you're moving around with an Aura or a Whoop or a Fitbit, you're moving. And so it's just really, really hard to get accurate beat times. And with HRV, junk in, junk out. So we are clinical grade HRV, and so we insist on having single lead EKG accuracy.
So when do you think someone should look into using a Bluetooth heart rate monitor and using an app as Sweetwater HRV or whichever one you suggest, versus just going by the Aura? When is their Aura Ring or Whoop telling them a red flag? Ooh, you should probably dig a little deeper and get more accurate measurement.
Well, I think the Aura is great for, and these are great for tracking your heart rate, as is the Apple Watch. They do a decent job guessing at your sleep. Okay. I think it's more how you're feeling that would drive you to really want to get good HRV results. So are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you having digestive issues? Are you just not feeling right? Are you having migraines? All of these things. Are you having burnout symptoms because you're a crazy Ironman athlete? You should, if you're doing any kind of that kind of training for even marathons or triathlons, you need to be measuring your HRV every day and integrating that into your training. But yeah, in general, if you're not feeling right, like I said, digestive issues, migraines, anxiety, depression, all of that, you should be measuring your HRV. And in fact, if you're taking supplements, measure your HRV and see what they're doing. 130 million Americans spend, $90 billion a year on supplements because someone said so. We've got the keto diet. We've got the carnivore diet. We've got the vegan diet. We've got the vegetarian. We've got which one's working for you? You don't know. Because once again, as I said, the scale, you can tell if you're losing weight, but you can't tell if you're having good results systemically. And so, but as far as not feeling well, if you're having any of those symptoms, then you definitely want to measure your HRV. And one more thing, because I have some friends that are in this place, they don't overeat, but they're metabolically broken. They've been eating standard American diet all their lives. And now it's like they're having the illnesses. They're in their 60s and they're being hospitalized, and they don't smoke, they don't drink, but they're metabolically broken. And so these people as well need to be measuring their HRV, and the vagal tone is associated with that, with your full response, with your hunger response. It's in charge of all of those, satiety, and I can't pronounce that word very well. If you're satiated, all of that. If you can't lose weight, start measuring your HRV, and then you can do something to improve it, and then specifically improve your vagal tone.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there because you just mentioned
Yeah.
a bunch of things. So, heart rate variability, how does it help with nutrition? What data, what we get from measuring heart rate and looking at not eating the right foods, like you said, carnivore versus plant-based or whatever.
Yeah. So you will not see. So once again, I like to refer people to Daily Beat, our app, because it shows you where you are. It's Daily Beat HRV on iOS. And it's coming soon to Android, by the way. We used to have it and then it broke, and now we got to fix it. But it shows you where you are compared to people your age and gender, because everybody's is going to be a little different. And there's a lot of areas that are healthy. They're fine. But like if you're trying to be an elite athlete or someone who's an executive who really wants to be on their game all the time, you kind of want to be up into the high level HRV. You want to be in the high performance bracket. Okay. If you're someone who can't lose weight and who's overweight, and it is going to affect your health in terms of heart disease and cancer and type 2 diabetes, you're going to want to look at it and try to improve yourself as well. And so Daily Beat HRV is really the one to use to see where you are. And then if you're doing carnivore and you don't feel good, and watch your HRV and see if it's going down or up after a couple of months. And you just do a 3-minute measure every day. Okay. And so you can see if that's helping. Maybe vegan is right for you. And I just read the eating for your blood type because I kind of started understanding that a little bit. And, if you're type O, vegan may not be a good thing for you. And so what you'll do is take your supplement and right away measure your HRV. Okay. Mm. At the Bulletproof Biohacking Conference, we tried all kinds of things. And, Dave sold all kinds of stuff. And one of them improved my HRV and it decreased Donna's HRV. So the same thing. And we measured right after taking it. And mine always went up. It was repeatable. And hers always went down, which is repeatable. So I can't stress enough that one size does not fit all. And just because carnivore worked for some people, it's not going to work for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so you really need to have a scale, if you will, to measure what your lifestyle choices are doing for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in a wild health precision medicine course for the last 6 months on half of it's on epigenetics, looking at genetic SNPs, and they create a report called the Clarity Report and correlate that with your functional lab tests and see where you are for best nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, and putting that together. So it is interesting how we are all got to remind us that we are all unique bio individuals. And so what works for you might not work for me. And I think
Right.
that's what, the measurement helps with that. Interesting on the supplements, though, that is kind of correlates with our nutritional therapy functional exam we did. I haven't done it since COVID, so it's been a few years. We put a supplement under your tongue and then go measure a different
Oh,
place, like small intestine or something. So, but I could measure your heart rate variability and see if that changes just by putting under the sublingual measurement, right? Under the tongue.
absolutely. Absolutely. And just because we're on this topic, I want to share something. It's we have a food test that's
Mhm.
based on the Coca Pulse test. Now, it's not necessarily heart rate variability, but it's pulse, and it's due to histamine responses that cause your heart rate to increase. And there's various mechanisms to make that happen. But I was testing. We just migrated it standalone to the Apple Watch. So I'm
Mm.
sitting here testing our new app. Okay. And I'm doing a few things at the same time. And I'm like, why is my heart rate 78? I'm sitting here quietly at my desk. My morning heart rate's 50. And I hadn't even worked out yet that day. And here it is at 78. And I'm like, oh my God, I just ate my homemade protein bar, which is a base of homemade organic cashew butter. Okay. And then I had a handful of cashews. And I know that
Oh.
cashews and tree nuts are on what we call the suspicious seven.
Mm.
And that's these seven foods are responsible for about 90% of allergies. And so, but the thing that people don't know is a lot of these things aren't causing overt reactions like rashes or anaphylaxis or anything like that, but it is causing a low level reaction. So
Mm.
I'm like, I tested the cashews by themselves the next day. And I used our other food effect app, which is also measures your heart rate variability. And so not only did my heart rate increase from 50 to in the high 70s, my HRV went from 60 down to 40. And that's logarithmic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So these foods within 15 minutes were causing a big reaction for me. And I've got some inflammation in my hands. So I'm like, I'm bummed because my protein bars are so good. Everyone wanted the recipe, you know. So I tested eggs and I have a similar reaction to eggs, you know. So, but it also influences the HRV, and
Mm.
that's the vagal tone. So there's an
Yeah.
immediate, well, like within 15-minute reaction. So I would also recommend people if they really want to get into it, to get our food effect app and put on a chest strap. And so that way they can see their pulse. And you can do it with our Sweet Beat app, but this gives you some nice, you can log the food that you ate and
Mm.
that kind of thing. But yeah, so testing supplements, super important because everybody listens to their favorite podcast, influencer, and they go take what they're taking.
I know.
And
That's
it's
so
not really,
true.
yeah, it's not working. It's not for their body. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll get new clients, and you can tell they listen a lot of podcasts because their supplement list is super long.
Yeah,
So I go through, okay, what do you actually need? Let's figure out tasks and what you need to focus on supplementing why you're needing it.
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. So that's
So
really where we're pushing people, is using the scale analogy. You weigh yourself, but you don't measure yourself in terms of metabolic health, systemic health, on what this stuff's doing.
mm. But that is also a good selling point to do that versus food sensitivity testing, which can cost $400.
Exactly.
And
And it's based on Coca Pulse test. And if you
mm.
Google this or do a search on this, they're going to go, oh, well, it's not proven. That's because they haven't done any studies. However, we have a white
Oh,
paper that I wrote. Yeah, there's no studies on it. They want to sell
that's
you
why.
drugs. Um, and but there's actual studies that show low level and high level food allergies cause a heart rate increase, but
Mhm.
they don't say it. The pulse test, is proven, but it really is through other mechanisms and other studies. It's not ethical to put people with peanut allergies to eat peanuts, but they do have a study where people signed the waivers and they had EpiPens ready, and they saw absolutely heart rate increases through reducing stroke volume or increasing blood vessel size. There's a few mechanisms that they estimate, but definitely the food test is valid. And I did it myself, like I said, and watched pulse go up, almost 30 points, and HRV go down 30 points. And it recovers after about 30, 40 minutes. But you don't want that. That contributes to some chronic problems.
Well, that goes to the next topic that you're talking about, metabolic health, and if any correlations with metabolic health with heart rate variability, vagal nerve, because we talk about heart health when you're measuring for heart rate variability can be related to heart health. Is there a connection with metabolic health with measuring heart rate variability?
Definitely. And that's where we, once again, the vagus nerve goes down, and it gets all into everything. Okay. It's got a two-way conversation with your gut, with your hormone systems. And like I said, it has a lot to do. It has a two-way conversation of influence with your microbiome. Okay. And they've done studies where they use, it's a vagal tone stimulator. And so people who have untreatable depression, they do an implant actually in the skin, and it's just electrostimulation of your vagus nerve. And they see really good results in terms of depression, seizures, migraines, all have significant improvements by stimulating the vagus nerve. And there's also some that you can stick on your skin. I think some of the TENS therapies, I think that's probably what it looks like, that you can do to stimulate your vagal tone. But once again, I'll bring back the whole hunger cycle. And when are you hungry? And then how do you get full? And that's all tied to the vagus nerve. And so everything about your metabolic health and your any sort of digestive issues or Crohn's disease or colitis and all of that have been tied to a healthy vagal tone or an unhealthy vagal tone, if you will. And so the beauty of that is that there's something you can do about it. And that is, you don't need drugs. There's some actual exercises and things you can do.
Yeah. So let's get into, we're talking about metabolic health, longevity, cellular health is really part of that, mitochondria health, and how all this is connected for improving the aging process. And being a health optimizer these days is, people that are biohacking, my Oura ring died and they won't replace it. So I have no Oura ring, and Garmin and Whoop and all these devices we're talking about. But I just feel a need that we need to understand, as we're talking today, why we're measuring it, how to use that data, what it means, what it could correlate with, some, tying that together with other red flags you might have as digestion or anxiety, depression. You said migraines, obvious stuff that your body's own innate intelligence is saying, hey, I'm getting and drowning here, something's going on. So we get this data, we're collecting information, but what to do about it, how to make it better. And so that's kind of the next part, I guess, is, we get a number.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Yeah. Well, you said something that I'm going to digress for a moment, but it ties right into this. That just reminded me. We are actually electrical beings, and the whole electrical universe model is really, it's being popularized, but it's really true. And most everybody listening to this knows that we're electrons and protons. Chemistry is secondary in terms of, if you dig down, if you keep going down, then you get to the atom, and then you get to a nucleus, which is protons and neutrons, and then electrons. And then there's all this space between that's not empty. Okay. But anyway, there's a voltage across the cell membrane that makes the cell healthy. Okay. And the cell membrane is made by healthy fats. And this whole war on cholesterol has caused a lot of issues. And the whole war against animal fats has caused a lot of issues, because what happened is people lower their cholesterol to a point where their bodies don't have enough fat, healthy fats, to create the cell wall it needs to maintain the voltage. And this goes into the brain. There's a lot of study information coming out now that all the statin use could be contributing to this huge increase in Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's. But so what we've been, and we were all part of this, we've been told that, oh, saturated fats and animal fats, stay away from butter, and eat canola oil. Okay. Well, canola oil is actually, I think, one atom away or molecule away from plastic. And so what we're doing is we're not eating animal fats like a tallow or good grass-fed butters or good grass-fed meats. We're eating canola oil and processed foods and sunflower oil and soy oil. And so what your body does is use that to create your cell wall. And that can't hold the voltage. And now you've got cancer and all kinds of other diseases. And so with heart rate variability, there's an indirect way that you can measure the voltage of your nervous system. And I've talked about this in a lot of my talks. And so once again, it's in Daily Beat, where I give the example of a stereo. If you have a 20-watt stereo and your favorite song comes on and you crank it up, it's going to get all staticky. It's not going to sound good. Whereas if you have a 250-watt stereo, then you're dancing to clear, clean music when you turn it up. So we want that power level, which can be reflected back indirectly to the voltage levels across the cells and healthy cell and a healthy body and healthy interactions. So we can measure kind of our voltage, if you will, and our power levels using heart rate variability.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what I just did a video this morning on taking ownership of your health, doing what you can do now to thrive as you age. And as I'm 50, I would say 50, but now I'm 52, that yesterday was Father's Day. My dad passed away 2 years ago. And I just feel like so much of that, what happened to him, heart disease and kidney and cancer, all
Yeah,
his medications that he was on. I know a lot of people can relate, but I started to realize how many other people that are my age have lost their fathers and their mothers are still alive. And
yeah,
how it's not just for women to take ownership. I think men need to step it up a
they
notch
do.
more than women.
Yeah,
So
and just
sad.
tying that back, sorry, I got so excited about the voltage thing, but it's a lot of that will have to do with longevity. The DNA, everything, the telomere link. If you're not able to maintain your voltage, then you're going to have disease in all ways. And disease in all ways leads to faster aging. Okay.
Mhm.
And so by having the healthy voltage, there's a great book by Dr. Jerry Tennant, if your listeners are interested, called Healing is Voltage. And he's like this genius MD who healed himself through these theories. And it's very true. I learned it. I took Physio 110. I took the pre-med physiology in undergrad because it was just interesting, even though I was an electrical engineer. And to me, it was like, oh, it's potassium and sodium. That's the voltage across the cell. Oh, and so it really is. It's key, and you can get a good idea of that by measuring your HRV and stay away from seed oils. Okay, you can get potato chips now for those of you that have to have that are made with avocado oil and olive oil. And really, I'm on a rampage to not consume any canola oils anymore. Like I said, I've got a little inflammation, and I'm pretty healthy. I cook most of my own food, but I'm still having some inflammation. So I got rid of the cashews. I rarely eat eggs. So I'm getting rid of the foods that are definitely having a sensitivity and creating some level of inflammation.
Yeah,
So, but
your
yeah,
inflammation.
my inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Kate Shanahan's new book she's on, I've seen a zillion podcasts really promoting her new book on the seed oils. So I think people can learn more from
Yeah.
her. She's really on a mission to help make that a change. And you listen to her interviews, it's, really uphill battle. Same with
Yeah.
Dr. Casey Means, her book, Good Energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to check her out. But yeah, measure what you're putting in your body. Measure how it's affecting you.
Mhm.
Notice, understand that the brain is a giant filter
Mm.
and a pattern matcher. And if it's been with you a long time, you're not going to notice it. And having low energy will start to feel normal. You know,
Yeah.
you can, and a lot of women, and I did this, I blamed menopause on the fatigue.
Hmm.
Okay. It was not that. It was reactions to food I was eating. I was still caught up in the low fat, you know. I ate healthy, but I ate healthy in terms of a previous paradigm that's shifting now. And I kind of knew I needed more fat, so I got some low fat string cheese to add some fat to my diet. You know, a little avocado because the calories and the fat. Yeah, no. Now I eat just avocados at my leisure.
Yeah. You
And the
should.
fatigue's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that's why it's so important to individualize everything. We are all unique. And that's why we
yeah,
want to test, not guess, using heart rate variability information, but not just look at your number every day. Understanding, my point of this podcast today is understand what those numbers mean for
yes.
you and what to do about it. And just before I finish there, that Dr. Elizabeth Bright, we just did a follow-up Q&A session. We did 2 last year on eat fat, good fat for women and men, but hormones, as you're saying, every cell membrane is made from healthy fat. And I know our listeners are all into fat and protein, but I think just remember how we're made with cells, and cell membranes are made with fat, and our hormones, steroid hormones, are made from fat. So when I do blood chemistry analysis and doctors are saying lower that cholesterol so low, it's like, we need cholesterol to make steroid hormones. So I think it's really educating
Yeah.
ourselves and taking ownership of our own health, because we're not going to get the right advice from a lot of people in our medical world out there, sadly.
No, and they're trained that way. They mean well, but that's what they're trained
No,
to
they're not
do.
trained. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why we have people like us to try to help people get healthy, based on more of a holistic view.
Yeah, no, for sure. I always have to tell people your doctor's not doing the wrong thing. That's what they're trained in. They're not trained in all this other more holistic health and functional
They get no
medicine.
nutrition.
Yeah,
They don't know anything about nutrition. Look at the American Diabetes Association, what they recommend. It's just,
awful.
yeah, it's awful. It's
Okay,
awful.
I know we're gonna run out of time chatting, but what are the suggestions? We've talked in the past. We've got lots of past episodes over the last 12 years with Rhonda, but
Hmm.
what do you think is, if we have a big drop in our heart rate variability, what should we do to help bounce that heart rate variability back up, or we see consistent low data?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it all comes down to measuring, but I would say to notice anything in your body specifically. Okay. Because noticing is first,
Hmm.
and then changing whatever you think just subjectively is causing that. But then I would recommend testing the suspicious 7 foods.
Hmm.
And that's, dairy, actually red meat, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, soy, and wheat.
Corn?
Okay. Test those individually and seeing if you're having a reaction. If you are, get them out of your diet. But I would also look at measuring your sleep, and not just with the Oura rings or the Apple watches and that kind of thing. Measure, because they do. I know what they're doing, and we've done some sleep work, and they're doing a really good job based on actual lab data. But they're not measuring whether you really got a restorative night's sleep.
Hmm.
And so I would start measuring your sleep, and you can do that with Sweetbeat HRV app, and put the chest strap on, turn it on before you go to sleep, and then you will see your HRV go from, it usually comes down by the end of the day because it's ready for sleep. And you can see your HRV actually increase through the night if you're getting really restorative sleep. So I would definitely start doing that. If you're an athlete, I would definitely be using the HRV for training, so that you're not pushing yourself into adrenal fatigue and working out really hard when you haven't recovered from the last workout. So definitely
I want to
plan
add,
your day based. Oh, go ahead.
just to pause, sorry, interrupt, but you
That's okay.
said that overnight using it for sleeping. Can you do that with EMF turned off and airplane mode and still get a full night recording of your
You
heart
would
rate
need
variability?
Bluetooth. Yeah, you would need the Bluetooth. Um,
Okay.
and I have scalar field generators all over my house, so I mitigate the EMF, and it is very real. Some people are more sensitive than others. I had the PG&E smart meter under my bedroom, and I
Mhm.
had those old landline wireless phones in my room. Yeah, So went over to a manual meter and I took out those wireless phones, which are terrible. And I started sleeping better.
Huh.
So for me, the Bluetooth doesn't really affect my sleep. I turn the wire, the mobile part off for the cell phone, and the Bluetooth doesn't bother me. Now, if you're electrosensitive, you're going to have a problem with that. But it is a great way. So if you're electrosensitive, the other way to do it is to measure your HRV at night before you go to bed, just a 3-minute reading. And then when you wake up in the morning, measure it again. And you should see an improved HRV if you got a restorative night's sleep. But the geeks who are okay with Bluetooth kind of like to see what happens through the night. And you'll see it just go like this. It goes like this, but then it increases. Yeah. And planning your day based on your morning HRV. That's where Daily Beat is great, because we have a circadian rhythm to HRV, so it varies through the day. We also have a biorhythm where it varies through the month. And so there are going to be some days that you're going to have a lower HRV or willpower bucket or ability to stick to all the things you want to do. And so knowing that, it's not good to try to do focused creative work when you're having one of those days. That's a better day for busy work. And so that's another thing you can do. If you're starting any new supplements, or if you're taking supplements that you don't really, I would test them all. So just put on the chest strap, take your supplements, and then see what happens while you're working quietly at your desk or watching TV or taking a nap or something. Obviously, if you're out moving around, that affects your nervous system, and it's not going to give you the results you're looking for in terms of testing things. Yeah, and then, like I said, the food testing is important.
So tie that together, because you're measuring heart rate variability, but that's a measure of the stress in your nervous system. So how that connects to stressors of our HP axis system. If I wake up and my heart rate variability is lower, how's that related to if I did a Dutch hormone test or saliva cortisol test and it fluctuates through the day? Is there any connection with, well, I know the answer, but heart rate variability with adrenal function, high and low? How can we connect that data as clues towards HP axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, and thyroid axis?
I think you've studied this more, but we've talked. Debbie's awesome. She knows so much, but it shows up in terms of low vagal tone and low power numbers. So it will show up as a low HRV score, and it will show up, you could be in the 20 amp receiver place.
Yeah.
And if it's just that day, then you look at it and you go, you know what, today I'm going to try to squeeze in a nap. If I'm a McDonald's addict, I'm trying not to do that. I'm going to go a different way. I'm not going to drive past it. Or if I'm a shopper, I'm not going to go by the mall. I'm going to know that today, and I'm just going to go in and do some busy work. I'm not going to try to do the stuff that I actually thought I was going to do today. Super important, because then you get the whole mental thing of beating yourself up. That then makes things worse. And so, yeah, if you're having a low day, now if you're having chronic problems, then you go see Debbie, okay? Because she'll help you to rebuild your resilience, your strength, and she'll get you back into balance in terms of your adrenals. She's an expert at all this.
Yeah. Right. And everyone seems to have stress issues. I think what you said, though, about hormones, it's not just women that have fluctuations in their monthly cycles. You're saying men too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And they have good days and bad days too. So yeah. And a lot of my friends, they're just extreme athletes, and they track everything on, their Strava. They look at it constantly, and they don't check their HRV. And so even if they didn't have a big workout, they might be having in their biorhythm a day of low everything. And that's not a good day to go do a 75-mile bike ride up and down hills, because it's not going to do your body any good. It's not going to improve your performance. Your performance, as shown in a clinical trial based on VO2 max, if you integrate your HRV into your existing training program, you have better performance results. So yeah, so men too. It's not just women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think women, we always blame, as you said, menopause or, reaching menopause, post-menopause, that I'm not able to do certain things, but it's because I think we're not as resilient with so much stress in our bodies that we have to mitigate it with different stress management techniques. And so I would say, don't blame the aging process, embrace the change and do things a little differently than we did when we're 30
Well,
or 40.
exactly, Debbie. And I think a lot of it also has to do when you're older is we have mental baggage, but we
Mhm.
also have toxic load
Yeah.
baggage.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we didn't know, I'm 10 years older than you. And my mom was the first generation of convenience foods.
Mm.
Now, granted, they weren't full of glyphosate. Okay. And they weren't full of high fructose corn syrup. But through the years, those improved. And so we grew up just eating potato chips every now and then and eating. I used to think a lean pocket was a healthy dinner or a Weight Watchers lasagna, you
Yeah.
know. And I really did think that these were healthy things to do. I was working a lot. But then I started just realizing I could make a lasagna from scratch and freeze it into little individual portions. But
Mhm.
it's toxic load as we get older, and emotional and stress and all of that. And
Yeah.
I actually believe that as you get older, you do not have to degrade. Okay.
Mhm.
We start having
Amen.
these belief systems that then tell us that, oh, we're going to got to go to the doctor and get on some drugs. No, you don't. No, you don't.
No.
You can, it's free will. You have your choice
Yeah.
to do whatever, but you do not in your 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s have to become this old person. You can stay resilient by looking inside yourself, taking your health into your own hands, and learning about ways to measurement, and then learning from people like us how to measure it, and people like Debbie how to fix it.
Yeah. And then the breathing techniques, what are your favorite ways to help strengthen your vagal nerve?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I recommend. Our Sweet Beat apps have a breathing screen, and it turns out that the long exhales increase your vagal tone. And so, everyone says breathe, breathe, because when you get stressed, you stop breathing and you're breathing from up here and you're just kind of, and so by doing regular breathing exercises. So if you do yoga, take 5 minutes after the class is cleared to sit, close your eyes, and do deep breathing. And if you're a counter like me, I will inhale to a count of 3, exhale to a count of 6. Or you can pull up on our app and go with the breath pacer.
Mhm.
Okay. Do this every day. Deep breathing with long exhales. Absolutely. You'll see it if you're measuring HRV, you'll see it almost immediately. You'll see your
Mhm.
HRV start to change. And another one that's been clinically proven that I love is doing some coherence training with the heart math software. They also bring in getting you to have heartfelt feelings. Our
Mhm.
hearts are huge mediators. Our hearts are really our second brain, and they send traffic up to the brain almost more than I think it's the afferent traffic, which is away from the heart, is
Mhm.
more than the efferent traffic, which comes from the brain to the heart. And the heart, energetically and esoterically, is how we want to live our lives. And you can have, I think a lot of heart conditions are from closed hearts.
Mm.
And it's not only holding hate and anger in your heart, it's also hiding love in your heart. So that was that woman I described from the Bulletproof Conference, was hiding love in her heart. And when she
Yeah.
was able to open that, she was a different person the next year. And
Mm.
so heart math is wonderful for that. It gets you, I would do 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes every day. And that focusing on really opening your heart, finding something to open your heart about. And you might cry,
Mm.
and that's good.
Yeah.
So these are ways that will absolutely, it's clinically proven, will increase your HRV. And the heart opening will increase your just general health and the way you move through life.
Mhm. Those are great tips. So the other areas I know I've heard to heart rate variability or strengthening that vagal nerve is humming, gargling,
Yes,
singing, stuff like you
tapping.
can do.
So it's
Tapping, yeah.
not to be confused with EFT,
Okay.
which is the tapping technique, but it's tapping. And I'm a
Oh,
Qigong instructor as well. And
that's right.
part of what we tap doing this, it opens up all the meridians.
Mm,
Okay. So the tapping, and then your vagus nerve is here doing massage. They recommend
mhm.
massage, and we all like massage, but really, if you're having low vagal tone, go get at least a head and shoulder massage. So it's up here, but the vagus nerve just, that's why we get tight here. And
Mhm.
so the gargling, yeah. There's a great book by Jonathan Goldberg called The
Mm.
Humming Effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so the powerful effects of humming. He does all this great healing music, chakra music, vibrations, songs that go vibrate each particular chakra, and I've played with
Mm.
that, and it's pretty good.
Oh,
And so,
that's a good
but the
idea.
humming effect is a great book. Yeah, so all
Wow.
of these, there's not a lot of data showing that the gargling, but I'm telling you, it will be helpful, and it does
Yeah.
vibrationally opens the body and opens the meridians and lets the chi or prana or life force or whatever you want to call it
Mhm.
flow better. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's
when
that
that gets
vagal nerve, the wandering nerve, and just how to
yes,
strengthen it. Kind of like a string of a guitar string. Almost seems like you just need to
exactly,
pluck the string of the guitar to make it stronger.
exactly. That's a great analogy. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So, where should we go to learn more about you? You've got the background, so
Yeah,
sweetwaterhrv.com.
sweetwaterhrv.com.
What about the apps?
And we've got multiple apps. We have a professional version for people like Debbie who want to track their clients' HRV. Um, and we have a, a Apple Watch standalone for the food. So all you need is the Apple Watch. You load it on there. You go
Mm,
start meal, end meal. There's instructions on how to use that. And then we have a food test on the iPhone that you can wear with a strap to actually, it's a good place. You can do it with Sweet Beat as well, but it's a good place to log your food and see
mhm,
what's really going on. And then we have the Daily Beat HRV, which is really where you can see where you are compared to other people your age and gender. It's a 3-minute reading in the morning, and then you can run longer sessions later, but it's really meant for a daily 3-minute reading. And that's really good for people who are going on diets, starting new programs to get your willpower score for the day. And I
mhm,
just want to, because this is it's such a bummer. It's the society we've been raised in, and I was there. So people that need to lose weight, they start on Monday, okay? And then they do really well until Thursday when they blow it in whatever way. And then they just beat themselves up. They eat sugar and junk all through the weekend, and then they start again Monday. Okay. And it's just this vicious cycle of self deprecate. It's bad. And so with the willpower score, you can see today's a weekday. Like I said, don't drive by the mall or don't drive by the McDonald's. And if you do blow it, go to bed early, start it the next day. Get a good night's
mhm,
sleep. Don't beat yourself up. Okay. So Daily Beats is just great for every day. It gives recommendations based on where you are. And by doing these things, you improve your overall life.
mhm.
And then Sweet Beat HRV is the nerd one. It's got all the numbers and graphs for people that want to see the deeper dive into HRV. It doesn't show you where you are compared to your age and gender, but it gives you graphs and data.
Yeah,
And
I
so
like that
we
one.
have tons, and it has the HRV for training feature as well for athletes, because the athletes tend to want to see the data.
Yes.
And so, yeah, yeah. And we have Recover Faster, which is a deeper dive into athletic recovery. It asks you more questions. There's a deeper algorithm for that, where it
Mm,
asks, hydration levels and how did you sleep and how are you feeling and that kind of thing, and then gives you a more comprehensive recovery score. So yeah, we've got a whole suite of apps, and I'm calling it the hashtag self-health movement. Um, and like I said, people have got to start taking their health into their own hands if they want to be healthy. Because look what's going on. We spend the most as any country on medical disease care, if you will, and we have the worst outcomes. And so it's
yes.
time for people to stop looking up to the doctors as on a pedestal. They're humans who are doing their best based on the training that they've
Mhm.
taken, and take your health into your own hands.
I'm only smiling because that's what I say all the time.
Yeah.
So, I'm with you.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
true. It's
yeah.
frustrating, but we can all try together and do what we can because it's not probably going to change the food industry and the food pharmacologic or pharmacy drug ads and all that.
It's up to
So
us to stop taking it.
it's us.
Stop
Yeah.
buying the food, stop taking the drugs.
Yes. So
And
true.
then and so obviously there's people that do need, and I think, sometimes
Yeah.
you
When
need
it's
some
right.
drugs, but as a chronic lifetime drug, like statins, for example, taking that for the rest of your life is not a good idea.
So good. All right, we'll put
Yeah.
everything in the show notes. So I thank you for your time and we'll put the links to
Yay.
everything and we will help learn about what is your LF to HF score and how resilient are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Debbie.